Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Jane Renahan, Compliance Consultant at Dental Compliance Limited. This course, titled Practice Manager's Introduction to Ionising Radiation Regulations, is designed for practice managers, practice owners, and dental nurses who take the lead in developing and maintaining radiation compliance processes within the dental practice. The elements discussed here are essentially first steps in designing your successful radiation compliance program. These elements are designed to be robust and, more importantly, sustainable over time. Our course objectives are to begin by examining the statutory controls, legal aspects, and organisational framework of radiation protection, to review the basic first principles for radiation protection systems, and to look at the governance, the authorised roles and responsibilities within the radiation regulations. We'll then move on to consider the implications and implementation of the legislation in dental practice, identify key requirements for the protection of patients, workers, those employed in the dental facility, and members of the general public. And the course will end by outlining the Health Information and Quality Authority HIQA's assessment and inspection processes. The ionising radiation regulations in Ireland are based on the EU directives. The most recent Council directive on radiation was published in 2013. However, it was not transposed into Irish legislation until early 2019. Whereas the Council directive of 2013 applies to all member states and is the basis of legislation in each member state. How that member state transposes the legislation will vary from country to country. The significance of this is that our dental staff members who have received their training in radiation legislation outside of Ireland will not be familiar with the nuances of how the legislation is implemented in Ireland. So whereas dental radiography training will travel very freely from country to country, training on legislation is member specific. If you have a staff member who have not received radiation training as it applies to Irish legislation, this is something which needs to be addressed within the practice. When the EU directive was transposed into Irish legislation, the elements of it were divided between two competent authorities, and this can cause confusion. So we're going to take a considerable amount of time during this course going through the two elements of this. But in summary, elements of the directive which were relevant to the protection of patients undergoing dental radiological procedures were given to the Health Information and Quality Authority. And these regulations sit within the Medical Exposure Regulations, Statutory Instrument number 256 of 2018. Now, when it comes to the protection of those who work with radiation and members of the public, this comes under a different competent authority. The Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, have responsibility for occupational hazards within dental practice. So these elements of the EU directive were transposed to Statutory Instrument number 30 of 2019, known as the Ionising Radiation Regulations, or sometimes referred to as IRR 19.